So welcome everyone, and this week our subject is keys to effective reconciliation. And there are effective ways to do reconciliation and non-effective ways, and we can learn a lot from our parsha about what is effective in when trying to do reconciliation, because we have the story of the reconciliation between Yaakov and Esav. So I want to suggest to you my theory first, and then look at the verses. So I think there are do's and don'ts to having effective reconciliation between enemies, or if you want a less stronger word, adversaries. The do's are you have to tackle the root of the conflict. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't bribe the other party with something doesn't go to the root of the conflict. And you have to be sincere and honest about your effort to do reconciliation. In other words, it's not for some ulterior motive, but you really want to do reconciliation with them. And the don'ts are try to avoid bias and also avoid false assumptions, because they can undermine your effort to reconciliate with the other party. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Let's see how that plays out in the story. So the parsha begins. Do you see the words Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
And Jacob sent messengers, and he gives them a mission. He says, he charged them with saying to Esav, "Thus say to my lord, to Esav, thus says your servant Yaakov, I have sojourned with Lavan and have tarried until now. I have acquired cattle, asses, sheep, male and female slaves, and I send this message to my lord in the hope of gaining your favor." So what's interesting about how he calls his brother? What stands out?
My lord.
Yeah, very good. So very strange to call his brother my lord. Is there a point in that? Is it just flattery, or maybe this is actually like in the do's, like in the going to the root of the conflict? So we're going to tackle that later, but it's definitely a word to look at. He calls himself servant of Decha, and he calls Esav Adoni. Oh, let's see the Hebrew. That's interesting to see the Hebrew, because I think it's key. So in the Hebrew, it's so the narrator says Esav Achiv. The narrator telling us about this, right, uses the more natural word, brother. But then Yaakov says to his messengers, Kotamun la'adoni le'esav. He calls him, you call him my master. And then Ko amar avdecha Yaakov, tell him that don't call me his brother, call me servant. Okay, so this is one point that we're going to focus on. But then what happened when they came back? So when they came back, they said, Banu el achicha el Esav, v'gam olech likatcha v'arba meot ish imo. And in English, the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esav, he himself is coming to meet you, and his retinue numbers 400. Okay, so we have a difficult word here. We have a word that's in English a difficult word, not even in the Hebrew. What's the difficult word? What is retinue? I had to look it up.
What's so difficult about that? We all know what that means.
Oh.
Well, it's not every day.
It's not every day, but it's
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a college word. No, it's not. Not every high school kid knows retinue.
Anybody who took the college boards does.
Well, in the ancient days in the 1950s, we didn't have college boards, but we do what that new word was.
Okay. So you know the word. Tell me, does it have to you a military significance or a civilian significance?
it's a group of people supporting a single focus. It could be a single person or a single event.
But
And
okay, but when you hear
usually
it, you think,
it's the people who surround a
Yes.
person that's important.
yes, yes, but still,
Like I
want.
don't have one.
Okay.
Nowadays, we use the word entourage
Right,
rather than retinue.
right. Entourage.
right.
So, and I think that points us to a political figure, important figure, rather than somebody coming to fight with you. So
Yeah, I
by
think you're right.
choosing, right? That's
Yeah, I think you're right.
I like entourage. You never say the enemy's entourage. You say the political leader's entourage, president's entourage, or the prime minister's entourage. Exactly. I like that definition. So by the JPS, again, go back to the JPS. By choosing that, where's the JPS? By choosing that word, oh, it's the next slide. Do you see now the JPS translation? I don't know if you see.
Yes, yes.
Yes. By
Yeah.
choosing that, they're already pointing us in a direction. And now let's look at a different
We need a
translation.
different translation. Yes.
And Professor Fox in the Shocking Bible, we have
Yeah.
a volunteer to read his translation.
We came to your brother Esau, but he is already coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him.
And then he adds, this is his footnote, the asterisk, next to the 400 men, a considerable fighting force. Even if the number is schematic, as 10 times 40, it still represents something formidable. He took it in a direction very different than the JPS. He takes it in a military direction, threatening direction. These 400 people, they're coming to fight with you. They're coming to wage war with you.
Well,
So
there's
look how-
there's another key word that should be highlighted. Already coming. Already. In other
Yeah,
words,
yeah.
he knows you're on your way. He's coming out to meet you. You're not surprising him.
Right. And so is he right, but he's coming to meet you to fight, to wage battle.
So why doesn't the messenger tell Yaakov that either your brother seems prepared to fight you or your brother seems to be coming in peace?
Oh, excellent
Why
question.
is it left
It-
so nebulous by the messenger? Just said, okay, he has 400 people with him, but
That's the $64,000 question, because we don't understand if they fulfilled their mission. It seems that they did not really do what they were told to do. If they seems that they saw 400 men, immediately turned around and said, "This is what we saw," and then they phrased it in a nebulous way, like you say, so that let's leave it to you to interpret that. But they were tasked with a mission to say to him certain things, to show him the presence. I mean, to tell him about certain things and to tell him that Yaakov is coming with a mission of peace. It seems from the verses themselves, but the Ramban, he says, no, they did fulfill their message. Let's read what he says. These messengers had fulfilled their mission, but scripture did not relate this, for it would serve no purpose. The meaning of the expression, and moreover, he comes to meet you, is that even as you go to meet him, so he goes to meet you, and you will quickly encounter one another. But I think that we go to other commentaries, and they see it as not just reporting facts, but reporting how the interpretation of the facts. Okay, so then the reaction of Yaakov is that he became exceedingly afraid. He was distressed. He divided the people into two camps. So he's already interpreting the facts as a threat to him. And then he does also prayer. We're going to see that he prays, and he also prepares gifts for him because he thinks that this is the end. Here's 400 men versus his camp. He has, a few sons and maybe some grandsons, but definitely he cannot take on 400 men. And so he anticipates violence, and he becomes very fearful, and he prays to God about that fear. But now go back again to the question that you're all raising. Wait a minute. Esav never said something about coming to battle, coming to take revenge. The messengers never said that. So how did our commentators interpret this 400? Because that seems key. They did say that. They did say he is coming toward you with 400 men. So Rashi, and this is how I grew up with this commentary. Why do they say we came to your brother, to Esav? Because it's a redundant word. They should have just said Banu el Esav, right? We don't. The Torah doesn't need to tell us that he's his brother at this point.
So if
Rashi says,
Yaakov didn't have a guilty conscience, he could have interpreted it as, gee, my brother is coming out to honor me with all these people.
oh, okay, we're going to get to that commentary. That's very interesting. Commentary goes against all the other commentaries. It's an outlier. So, but Rashi, to him of whom you said he is my brother, but he behaves towards you as Esav. So two contrasts. Your brother is what you think. You think of him as a brother, but he thinks of you as Esav, who is harboring hatred. So Rashi doesn't want to find any positive thing about this, about Esav coming to him with 400 men. The Seforno also goes even further than that. On the words, V'gam holech likratcha ve'arba meot ish imo, says the Seforno. We have a volunteer to read it?
Okay, not only have we seen him, but he did not react with satisfaction when we told him about your wealth. But he also marches toward you with 400 men in order to attack you. The expression is that likrat,
Yes.
meaning to approach with hostile intent, is repeated in Numbers 20:20, when again Edom is threatening the Israelites.
Okay, so they did fulfill their mission according to Seforno. They talked to Esav, and now they're reporting that the Torah says it in an abridged fashion, but really what they told Yaakov is that he is hostile towards you. These 400 men are out to attack you, and Seforno finds proof from the word likrat because it's used in a different context in Bamidbar when the nation of Edom is coming to threaten the Israelites. But first, you can see immediately that how can you compare apples and oranges? That talks about a whole nation, and let's see that verse. You'll see, because I want to fact check Seforno and see that there really is no proof from that word. So on the left, you see that verse that Seforno referred us to. Vayetze Edom likrato be'am kaved u'biyad chazaka. The whole verse clearly talks about a nation going into battle. Edom went out against them in heavy force, strongly armed. You cannot be more explicit than that. So the likrato, this word likrat, which the Seforno used as a basis for his interpretation, that came in a context which, right, which clearly, so that the am kaved yad chazaka, the heavily armed, that never appeared here in our verse. And I can bring two opposite proofs to the Seforno to counter his proof. I found two other places, and we're going to see other commentaries did that too, where likrat actually has a positive meaning of somebody coming out with joy, with happiness, as Natalie said. So the first one is when Aaron comes out to meet Moses. God tells Moses, this is after the whole argument, I don't want to be the guy leading the people, I have a problem with speech. And then God promises him, don't worry, Aaron will be your mouthpiece. And he is coming out, likratecha, v'racha v'samach belibo. Here he's going out to meet you or toward you, right? This is our word here, likrat, toward. So clearly it's a happy occasion. It's somebody coming with joy and with happiness. And then the other instance where we have the word somebody coming likrat is when Rebecca is coming to meet her fiancé or her future husband, Isaac, and she sees him in the distance. And she says to the servant, Mi ha'ish halazeh ha'olech basadeh likratenu, toward us. And so obviously he's coming to be her husband. This is a very positive connotation. I mean, she might not be so happy. Maybe there's a little bit of worries, anxiety, but eventually it turns out to be her husband. So you cannot say there's a threat here.
Shemai,
yeah.
can I ask you? So so in modern Hebrew, I don't think likrat has any connotation. It just means toward, right? It doesn't.
Right.
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 So, what about malach? You're translating it as messenger, but it really means an angel, doesn't it?
No,
I mean,
only with Elohim, combined with Elohim, it usually means an angel. But just the word malach is in the Torah and also in the Bible.
but in modern Hebrew, it's
yeah. In modern Hebrew, it became the word for angel. Yeah, for something, divine. Yeah, or coming from the divine or something supernatural. But in the Torah, in many places, a malach is just a messenger, a human being who is being sent as a messenger. So after we took the Sephora to task and we saw that really you cannot prove anything from the word likrat, let's see. Let's skip Bechor Shor, and let's see the Rashbam, because he comes with a revolutionary explanation. He was Rashi's grandson. He knew that Rashi interpreted the 400 as a threat. Esav is hostile. He knew all that. And he's an independent thinker. And he says, you, my grandpa, Rashi, and all the others who followed him, you're all wrong. Why you're all wrong? I'll skip the Hebrew. What the messengers meant, and you, Yaakov, found favor in Esav's eyes, as you expected. And as he is happy that you are coming home, and because of his love for you, he is walking toward you with 400 people to honor you. This is the pshat. Or in Hebrew, the main word, lichvodcha. So now we go back to the word retinue. So this would perfectly fit. The Rashbam, if he had to translate the Torah to English, he would definitely say, this is not 400 men fighting force. No, this is a retinue, an entourage. He's honoring you. And as any important figure wants to honor somebody else, they usually come with a whole entourage. And it's a sign of, especially in the ancient world, where Esav now has become the head of a clan that lives in Edom, in Seir. And then in our Midrash, he becomes the father of Edom, of the whole nation. But right now, I don't think we can see him as a father of a nation, but certainly the father of a big clan. And at the end of the parsha, the Torah goes into great detail about all his descendants. So as a head of a clan, it makes perfect sense that he would have an entourage of 400 people, not soldiers, not people intending to battle. And he goes even, and Rashbam goes even further. He says, to bring proof to his understanding, he says, with Lavan, God appeared to Lavan. When Lavan chased Yaakov, he appeared to him in the dream and said to him, beware of attempting anything with Jacob, good or bad. But with Esav, nothing. God never appears to him in the dream to try to warn him. That's one proof. The other proof that he brings is that Rashbam sees the whole struggle with the, now it's an angel. Now it's the mysterious angel, the where he gave him another name, Israel. He sees that as punishment for misinterpreting the 400 men and for this bias that he had, that Esav is coming to threaten him and to attack him, instead of understanding it the way Rashbam understands it, as an honor, a way to honor his brother. He has good intentions and he wants to honor you. And because you misinterpreted that whole thing, so God sends this angel and he has to fight with him. And that's very interesting that he turns that into a punishment for having this confirmation bias, basically. So we saw how bias can really undermine the process of conflict resolution when you try to do reconciliation. But and somebody already mentioned here guilt feelings, that it could be that he interprets the 400 men as a threat because he's feeling very guilty about what he did to his brother. So he can't even fathom the option that this is an honor, that this is somebody important, a VIP coming to meet him with his entourage. Okay, so that's the don'ts. Now we go to the do's, and to focus on one word with the do's. You want to go to the root of the conflict when you're trying to do conflict resolution. And the Torah uses a word when he finally meets up with him, and there's a very dramatic moment. They fall on each other's arms, they hug, they kiss. And then, so the kissing, very interesting word. There are dots on that word.
Mhm.
Where is it? Right here. Do you see it? Vayishlach,
Mhm.
maybe I'll.
Yeah.
Yes. So he ran towards him. Again, the word toward him. Okay, now it's clearly a positive connotation. Vaychabkehu, hugged him. Vaypol al tzavarav, he fell on his shoulders, fell on his neck. Sorry, not shoulder, neck. Vayishakehu, he kissed him with 6 dots on top. Vayivku, and they cried. So we're going to focus on that word because we're going to ask ourselves, where did we else see somebody kissing somebody? But not only that, then he says to him, for the first time, remember, he comes with a huge gift of animals, all kinds of animals to give to his brother, but he doesn't call it gift or mincha or matana, or he does call it mincha here, but then look at verse 11. Please accept my, they missed the translation here. It's too bad. Because in the Hebrew, look at the Hebrew, birchati.
Birchati,
What does birchati mean?
my blessing.
Blessing.
Where do we hear somebody about taking blessings? Where did that happen? With Yaakov and Esav, of course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right? So please accept my blessing. So maybe he's specifically using this word in order to go to the root of the conflict. And I want to bring a video to discuss that. He really, scholar Avi Silver has a beautiful video on this. So we're going to watch it together, just for about 8 minutes.
We'll discover that there's something more profound taking place. Let's replay the story more slowly, paying close attention to its details, and I'll show you what I mean. When Jacob hears that Esav is on his way with 400 men, he's terrified. So Jacob splits up his family in hopes that at least some will survive the coming onslaught, and he begs God for protection. Then, when Jacob finally gets within range of Esav, Vayishtachu arza sheva pe'amin, he bows down not once, but 7 times, ad gishto arachiv, until he reached his brother. It really seems like Jacob will do anything to butter up Esav, and hopefully convince him to spare his family. And the crazy thing is, it actually worked. Esav sees him and seems to inexplicably undergo a complete about-face. Vayaratz Esav likrato. He runs to Jacob. Vayichabkehu, vayipol al tzavarav. He hugs him and falls on his neck. Vayishakehu. He kisses Jacob. Vayivku. And then they cry. It's a love fest. Jacob's machinations worked after all. But why did Esav fall for this? This is the guy who vowed to kill his brother over their father's blessings, and he's been holding the grudge for 20 years. Now Jacob gives him a fancy petting zoo and calls him nice names, and he lets it all go? So maybe Esav is just a greedy buffoon. One moment he's full of rage, but when you buy him off with goodies, he's your best friend. Could be. But I think there's evidence that something else was afoot. To get to the heart of what's going on here between Jacob and Esav, I'd like to take a step back for a second and play one of our favorite games here at Aleph Beta. Where have we heard this all before? Ask yourself, where else earlier in the Torah have we encountered a scene of sorts that involves brothers, in which there's talk about one brother becoming extremely wealthy, one brother being a master over the other, one brother bowing down to the other? Well, wouldn't you know it, all of these elements appeared 20 years earlier in the blessings that Isaac gave to Jacob, the blessings that were intended to go to Esav. That was the last time these brothers crossed paths, and it's the reason they're meeting again only now. Let's take a look at those brachot. Isaac's blessing began, V'yiten lecha Elokim mital hashamayim umishmanei haaretz. God will give to you from the dew of heaven and the fat of the land, v'rov dagan v'tirosh, with abundant grains and vines. In other words, God's going to make you really rich. You'll receive the divine gifts of rain and crops. Now, those are gifts that only God can provide. But when Jacob meets Esav 20 years later, he gives him the next best thing, enough livestock to allow Esav to build up his own commercial empire. Isaac's blessing also spoke about gaining power and status. He said, Ya'avducha amim, nations will serve you. Hevegvir la'achecha, you will be a master over your brothers. So maybe it's no accident that Jacob calls himself Esav's servant, Avdecha Yaakov, and calls Esav Adoni, my master. And look at the final element in Isaac's blessing, bowing. V'yishtachavu lecha b'nei imecha, your mother's children will bow to you. When the brothers meet again, one of Rebekah's children is indeed bowing to the other. Jacob bows to Esav 7 times. And it goes still further. Isaac said, Yishtachavu lecha le'umim, nations will bow to you. Well, after Jacob bows to Esav, his 12 sons, the nascent tribes of Israel, all bow down to Esav one by one. They would one day grow into a great nation, and they were all bowing to Esav at this very moment. When we put the pieces together, we begin to see a startling picture. It's as if the words of Isaac's blessing were coming to life right before Esav's eyes. At this moment, Jacob seems to actually be giving the blessings back to Esav. And Jacob seems to intimate as much. A bit later on in their encounter, he says, Kach na et birchati, please take my blessing, asher huvat lach, that has been given to you. On the surface, Jacob is simply talking about the animals he sent his brother. But after hearing all the other echoes of the original blessing, we can't ignore the deeper meaning behind these words. Take my bracha, that was meant to be yours. Perhaps Jacob's antics weren't just bribes and flattery after all. This whole conflict was about the blessings he had taken 20 years ago. Perhaps Jacob was trying to set things straight, even the scales as it were, between him and his brother. So that might be part of what's going on here, but I want to argue to you that beyond questions of wealth and power, Jacob was looking to make things right at an entirely different level too. Because remarkably, if we broaden our lens and keep looking at these 2 episodes side by side, the parallels between them actually continue. 20 years ago, Jacob walked into Isaac's room claiming to be Esav. Right away, Isaac was suspicious, so he said, Geshana, v'amushcha b'ni, come close and let me feel you, son. He wanted to pat down Jacob to determine his true identity. Now fast forward 20 years. As Jacob makes his approach toward Esav, he bows 7 times ad gishto ad achiv, until he came close to his brother. Gishto, Gesha, it's the same word both times. And just like Jacob came close to Isaac and his father put his hands on him, here too Jacob comes close to Esav and his brother puts his hands on him. Vayichabkehu, he wraps him in an embrace. And there's more. The next thing Isaac told Jacob was Geshana ushkali b'ni, come close and kiss me, son. And 20 years later, the next thing Esav does is Vayipol al tzavarav vayishakehu. He fell upon Jacob's neck and kissed him. And Esav didn't just kiss him anywhere, he kissed Jacob on the neck. Now Jacob's neck had also played an important role back when he took those blessings. Jacob was afraid that his smooth skin would give him away, so in order to make him seem more like Esav, Rebekah took hairy goatskins and placed them on Jacob's hand, v'al chelkat tzavarav, and on the smooth of his neck. Now Esav kisses him in that very same spot. And perhaps most importantly, let's talk about the conclusion of each of these scenes. Both stories end in tears. When Esav realized that Jacob had taken the blessings, it says, Vayisa Esav kolo vayefk. He raised his voice and cried. 20 years later, after the brothers embrace and kiss, Vayivku, they also cried. We're seeing that these 2 stories, separated by 20 years, are following almost all the same steps. But there's a major contrast between these stories that I believe might hold the key to understanding the larger meaning behind this later encounter. It has to do with the tears. Although both stories end in tears, the tears are very different from one another. 20 years ago, Esav was crying tears of anguish and rage, tears that were transformed into a vengeful promise to kill his brother. Now, 20 years later, Jacob and Esav both cry. They're crying together. If we put it all together, it seems to me that these were tears of true healing and reconciliation, and they were caused by Jacob's initiative. Jacob knew that there was one thing and one thing only that could repair his relationship with Esav. He had to go back to the root of it all, to the blessings he took from their father. So as he approached Esav, Jacob acted out those blessings before him. He was showing Esav that he was ready to let go of the brachot and give them back to him. It wasn't a show or a bribe. Jacob was coming clean. He was willing to do what was necessary to restore their shattered relationship. And when Esav saw this, he was moved to tears. The brothers embrace, and in their embrace, they retrace the steps of Jacob's earlier deception. Only this time it's different. The same steps that were once used to deceive and tear the brothers apart are now bringing them closer together. This wasn't a replay of the past. It was redeeming that earlier episode, repairing the messy roots of their conflict. In the end, there is a moral to this story, and it isn't that you need to do whatever is necessary to come out on top. If anything, it's that you need to do whatever is necessary to heal a painful past, especially when you contributed to that pain, especially when the ones who are suffering are you and the people closest to you. Once upon a time, Jacob covered his neck to deceive and take what was meant for Esav, but now he's willing to literally stick his neck out to his brother in a sincere effort to make amends. Jacob didn't know whether Esav would attack him or kiss him, but his willingness to initiate and be vulnerable toward his brother proved to be his greatest strength. For me, this speaks to the heart of what reconciliation is all about. All too often, we remain in conflict with other people simply because neither of us is willing to budge, to be vulnerable enough to admit fault, or show the other one how much we sincerely want to fix this relationship. Jacob had the courage to rebuild what was broken, to repair the wounds of the past. That is a model to aspire to.
Okay. So I think it's a beautiful interpretation of the story, and it shows us what we talked about at the beginning, that a prerequisite for true reconciliation is you got to go to the root of the conflict and be sincere about it, like Jacob did. And I think it's very persuasive the way he showed it with all the different steps that Jacob took. And I think that applies to conflicts between nations too. And with that, we will conclude today. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Shalom.